Well, it looks like I'm a day late on this one. Last night I got a message from my friend Ivan Chester saying that there was a 67 Chrysler Imperial at the local pull apart. So right away, first thing this morning, I grabbed the GoPro and head out here. What he sent me was pictures of a complete car, and it appears to me that sometime yesterday somebody came here and hauled off a whole boatload of really super high quality 1960s Mopar goodness. But I'm not too upset about that, because honestly I would have seen this stuff and like gone nuts. Oh, how am I going to get this out of here? I already have too much stuff. I'm trying to get rid of stuff. I don't need more stuff. So I'm glad that somebody came and got, well, we'll get to the front of the car and I'll show you all of that. But the 67 Chrysler Imperial, or the Chrysler Imperial in general, is in a lot of respects the missing link in the Mopar family. So I'll explain how this comes to be. Everybody's familiar with the A, B, C, E-body Mopars, FMJ, the whole, the alphabet soup, right, of Mopars. But there's one letter that's consistently missing from the lineup, and that's the D body. So here's how this came about. Previous to 1962, there were no letter designations for the various Chrysler lines. You had the compact cars, the Valiant, and the Valiant was its own line, and the Lancer, its own, you know, along with the Valiant, its own separate line. And then you had the full-size cars, or just the standard size cars. So in 1962, Chrysler upsized the Valiant platform, and to distinguish between the standard Valiant, the compact Valiant, and the mid-size car, they started the letter designation system. So the small cars were the A bodies, the mid-size cars were the B bodies, the full-size cars were the C bodies. But there was a D body. Nobody ever talks about the D body, and the D body was the Chrysler Imperial. Now the Chrysler Imperial, the Imperial was not just a model, a Chrysler model. It was its own separate line, starting in 1955. And it was the top of the line. It was intended to compete with Cadillac, with Lincoln, with the prestige models of the day. And Chrysler, being the small guy in the, always tried a little bit harder. So when it came time to do a luxury car, they threw everything at the Imperial, and still is world class. It's a world class example of premium, optimal, opulent 20th century automotive just excellence in every way. So the main distinguishing factor between the D body and the ABC bodies, and E body came later, and the FMJ and all that, okay? The main difference between the D body and the standard C body Chryslers, full-size Chryslers, was that up until 1966, the Imperial, the D body, had a separate frame. It wasn't a unibody car. There was still a body-on-frame construction. In 67, which is what this is, they went to the basic C-body platform. They shortened the wheelbase a little bit, and it became a unibody car. But it didn't lose any of the extras or any of the luxuries. They were insanely heavy, over 5,000 pounds, ready to go. The well, we'll get to the motor end of it in a minute. But these were just the top of the line. Anything you could throw at a car to give it prestige, to give it luxury, to give it a little bit of extra sound deadening, a little bit of extra just, you know, flash. That's what they threw at these things, and they're just fantastic cars. How they've managed to escape becoming like cult things like Cudas and Chargers, I don't know. Because if I had to pick one car line, model line that really exemplified the over-the-top goodness of the 1960s Chrysler products, the Imperial would be right there. So let's talk about some of the other differences between the Imperial and the other cars. So we all know that the A-body cars of that period of time had a 4-inch bolt pattern on the wheels. The B and C-body cars all had a 4.5-inch bolt pattern, 5 on 4.5. The Imperials had 5 on 5. They had their own rims. They don't look anything like the other Chrysler rims of the era. These things had fender skirts as standard equipment. Lots of things as standard equipment. So now here's the skirts, and they're in beautiful shape. Anybody looking for fender skirts, here you go. Laverne Pull Apart in just south of Nashville, Tennessee. Standard features on these cars: the interiors were all leather. You see it's got a leather pull down armrest in the center there. Power windows were standard. You got a tilt telescoping steering wheel. It's standard. Air conditioning was standard. Every luxury feature you could order on a car basically came on these things as standard equipment. They were total top of the line, built solid. Like I said, on the 67s, the unibody on these is the same as the standard C body, but there were still a lot of unique features. Like, for example, here's something you don't see on any other, no, hood here. Here's something you don't see on any other Chrysler product of the era. That's a voltage regulator, right? It's the Imperial is the only one. Imperials and police package cars were the only ones that used that regulator. And you see it's got its own special mount. And that was just to deal with all of the heavy-duty electronics that were packed in these cars. Cruise control, there's a cable for the cruise control. You name it, and it was in these things. So what's missing here, okay, and here, right down here, there's the drive shaft. And you can see it's got a double U joint, so it's a CV joint. So what's missing here is its 440 and torque flight transmission. So the 440 in 1967 was the first year for the 440. Previous to that, it was a 413. They increased the bore and made it a 440. 1967 has a one-year only cylinder head. It's the closed chamber head that they used on the 361s, 383s, and 413s, but with a larger exhaust valve. It has 1.78 exhaust instead of the 1.6. It's the sought after, it used to be the sought after 440 head. 1 year only, 1967 440 head. And naturally the engine had all of the good stuff inside of it, you know, forged crank, forged rods, everything was just top of the line, top quality. Beautiful engines. These are the cars that everybody loves the 440, everybody knows the 440. Well, these are literally the cars that the 440 was designed around. This is what that engine and its various characteristics were intended by the engineers. This is the car that it was intended to move down the road. It was optional in other cars, obviously, but the intent, the design intent, was for these big, heavy, luxury yacht, you know, land yachts. And had to pull this thing, possibly pulling a trailer up a steep hill at 70 miles an hour and not skip a beat, not breathe hard. Well, that's what this was intended for. And then, of course, you know, the rest of it, the 440, right? It's a shame seeing this thing in here. But like I said, a lot of the important parts have found a home, thankfully. But now the Chrysler Imperial has one other distinction. This is like my favorite, one of my favorite automotive trivia things. I love the trunk, everything had, and it's all still in beautiful shape. Carpeted covers for everything. Okay, here's the core support on the car, and there's the Chrysler Certicard holder. So the Chrysler Imperial has one unique distinction that no other car in the world that I know of has. And that's that for the last 50 years, since the 70s, the Chrysler Imperial is the only car that I know of that has been exclusively banned from demolition derbies. You look at any demolition derby flyer or you know, coming attractions type of thing, and at the bottom of it, it'll tell you what kind of cars and so on and so forth, and at the bottom it'll say, no Chrysler Imperials. Because these things actually had a reputation for killing people. The earlier Imperials, the full frame 66 and earlier Imperials, literally indestructible. You put those things, you know, in a demolition derby with 40 other cars of every make and model and everything else, and there's only one that's going to come out on top. Like, there's nothing could kill these cars. They were indestructible. And so, like I said, it's the only car that I know of that since the 70s has been banned from demolition derbies. And it's a distinction, right? All right, so hopefully somebody who's into these cars will come and pick the rest of the valuable and unique little trinkets off of it and give them good homes. It always hurts to see them like this, but like I said, at least the drivetrain parts are going to a good home with somebody who will appreciate them. That's it. It's about to start raining. I got to get out of here. I'll see you tomorrow.